neo-Nazis were murdered in Florida, and the story took many different turns after investigators arrived to the scene of the crime and they found explosives. Now, there were allegedly 4 so-called neo-Nazis living together in this particular place. And at one point, the suspect, who has been charged with first-degree murder, Devon Arthurs is his name, apparently had converted to Islam, even though he had sympathized with this neo-Nazi ideology. Now, after he had done so, naturally, his neo-Nazi friends were disrespecting his newfound faith. So as a result, he decided to murder them. After he murdered them, he actually went to a store and basically held hostages. Authorities showed up 5 minutes later. Luckily, no one was hurt then, but Arthurs did let the cops know that he had killed 2 people that he was living with. At that point, authorities showed up to the scene of the crime and they found a 21-year-old by the name of Brandon Russell. He is actually part of the Florida National Guard. Now, when they started investigating and they looked into the apartment to see if they could find any evidence of the crime, and of course they found the bodies of the 2 victims, authorities actually found explosive materials or materials to make explosives. So while searching the garage, investigators found a cooler full of white cake-like explosive material known as HMTD. Nearby, they found explosive precursors, chemicals that can be mixed to create explosives, including potassium chlorate, potassium nitrate, nitromethane, and more than a pound of ammonium nitrate in a package addressed to Russell. Now, Russell said that he was in the USF Engineering Club in 2013, and he used the HMTD in part to boost homemade rockets and to send balloons into the atmosphere. A member of the FBI said, no, these materials are much too strong for the project that he claims he was using it for. But also keep in mind that in his bedroom, investigators discovered Nazi and white supremacist propaganda, including a framed photo of Timothy McVeigh.
So I want you guys to be clear on this. Devon Arthurs is the killer. He's the one suspect, okay, who has admitted to killing his 2 roommates, which he said were neo-Nazis. Now, one of their sisters says, no, my brother was a sweet neo-Nazi. I mean, was a sweet guy. And so they'll have to investigate to find out if they were neo-Nazis. I mean, the guy's a killer, who knows, maybe he's lying, right? But they did find neo-Nazi paraphernalia all over the apartment. The bombs is not the killers. The bomb making equipment is Russell's. Russell is not the guy who did the killing. He's the guy that the FBI found crying outside because his 2 roommates were dead.
Right, he discovered his 2 dead roommates and was crying as a result of that. And so again, Russell's is not the one who is suspected of murder in this case. However, he did have the materials necessary to make explosives, and it did seem as though there was some questionable intent there. And so he has been charged for having those materials in his home.
Yeah, and the FBI expert's like, no, this is highly explosive material, and you don't use it for balloons. I mean, I would have come up with a better excuse. I mean, if you got neo-Nazi paraphernalia all over, and in some of the messages it looks like they're talking about bombing people, killing people, you got a framed picture of Tim McVeigh, and you've got explosives in your fridge, and you say, oh, it's just making balloons. Yeah. Not the most credible excuse you could have come up with.
Yeah, and what's interesting is, Arthurs is the one who got Russell in trouble, right? I mean, he's the one who did the crime, and as a result, the authorities show up and they do an investigation and they find all of these explosive materials. And Arthurs continues to throw Russell under the bus. He stated that for some time before the murders, he had been privy to Russell participating in online neo-Nazi internet chat rooms where he threatened to kill people and bomb infrastructure. So why am I bringing this story up? First of all, it's an interesting story to begin with, but secondly, thankfully the authorities were able to find these materials before they were actually put to use. But this is the kind of stuff that needs to be investigated. This is the kind of stuff that happens. This is a man who was idolizing Timothy McVeigh, who killed over 100 people in Oklahoma, innocent individuals, right? He is idolizing that guy. So this is the type of activity that needs to get some attention, that needs to be investigated. We need authorities to focus on it. But unfortunately, in terms of the Department of Homeland Security, all the way back in 2009, they got rid of a team that focused on right-wing extremism, right? Because they thought, hey, the conservatives are complaining about our focus on this issue, so maybe we need to reshift our focus onto other forms of terrorism. But this is the type of terrorism that exists in the country, and it's just as important as Islamic terrorism.
And in the case of Devon Arthurs, they might have been able to catch him too if they were tracking neo-Nazis. Because look, if you're tracking them and then all of a sudden, and to give you a sense, it's not like they're hiding this stuff. Russell's was, first of all, they said there might be 2 radiation sources as well inside the apartment, which is even scarier. He was part of a group called Atomwaffen, translated in German to atomic weapons, okay? And they would, according to the allegations, he would go to a website called the Global Fascist Fraternity, where they urged, quote, race war now. Now, when somebody says race war, as we saw in Charleston, sometimes they mean it. And now, if you're gonna, remember when New York would investigate almost like innocent Muslims and they never found anything, they went to their mosques, they went to their schools, they even went down to Rutgers in New Jersey where they didn't belong, it wasn't even their jurisdiction, and they investigated all the Muslims and they didn't find anything, right? When you have people online going, let's start a race war and call ourselves atomic weapons and idolize guys like Tim McVeigh, who was one of the biggest terrorists in American history, I'd take a peek over there. I'd do it legally, get warrants, etc. If it's if it's warranted, literally, okay. But yes, those are the guys looking to. And if they had, they might have noticed, this neo-Nazi kid turned into a fundamentalist Muslim.
Which is so crazy. I mean, he went from being a neo-Nazi to all of a sudden being angry at American foreign policy that kills innocent civilians abroad. Which is so fascinating, which, by the way, I agree with that statement. We shouldn't be killing innocent civilians abroad, regardless of their political affiliation or religious affiliation. It's a bad idea. I mean, that leads to a lot of hostility toward the United States.
No, the kid is super unstable, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because he then gets so engrossed in it that he's like, well, if you guys aren't gonna stop killing people in my country, I'm gonna start killing people in your country. Dude, you were born in Florida.
Yeah, exactly.
What country are you talking about, right? So now it's okay, obviously religion is an ideology and you can convert to it, and he converted to it, so he's Muslim, no question about it, right? And then some people will say, no, he's not a real Muslim. I know, no true Scotsman. Okay, you call yourself a Muslim, you're a Muslim. You call yourself a Christian, you're a Christian. There's a huge variety of those, from the incredibly peaceful to the incredibly violent in those religions. So, but if I'm an FBI guy who was tracking this in the first place, and I got some neo-Nazi clown who turns into a Muslim fundamentalist clown, maybe they could have found him before he did the killings of his neo-Nazi buddies.
Yeah, what I just always fail to understand is the use and the effectiveness of the NSA. Because look, the argument that privacy advocates make over and over again is, if you're indiscriminately collecting all of this data on every American, regardless of reasonable suspicion or probable cause, you just collect the information indiscriminately. You're gonna have all this data, and it becomes even more difficult to analyze it, right? So you need to have some sort of hint, at least, that someone is dangerous if you're gonna go ahead and spy in on them, or have some suspicion about someone before you spy in on them. And so they're just indiscriminately collecting all this information, and then are we safer? I mean, they're able to take part in these online forums talking about killing people, and it's totally okay. They don't get investigated, and this story blows up now where 2 people have been murdered.
So it's not just un-American to spy in on all of us who are innocent. But it's also inefficient, to Anna's point. It doesn't help you get quicker to the people who could actually cause us harm. So for God's sake, focus in on the people who might actually cause us harm and stop spying in on the rest of us. And when you don't, well, then it leads us to believe that maybe the spying isn't to keep us safe, but it's to keep you safe. You meaning the people already in power. And if anybody challenges your power, then lo and behold, look at what I have on you.
Right.
Meanwhile, these neo-Nazi / fundamentalist Muslim kids are running all across Florida doing insane stuff.
Right, and it's an interesting story because it's a rare instance where you have neo-Nazis and radical Muslims taking part in terroristic efforts, right? And so, look, final thing I want to say about this is, I don't know when we got to a point in this country where focusing on certain types of terrorism became an ideological thing, right? Look, federal officials should focus on any terroristic attack or attempt to attack, regardless of what someone's political affiliation is or religious affiliation is. I don't care if it's Muslim, I don't care if it's Jewish, I don't care if it's Christian. It doesn't matter, okay? Terrorism is terrorism, and we need to stop pretending as if one is a little bit better than the other. And I feel like that's the treatment that we get.
Those guys are mental, man. Like, they probably, in their projection, think that we think like they do. Like, we don't want you to look into Muslim terrorists.
No, I want you to look into
Of course we want you to look into Muslim terrorists because we don't want to get blown up, right? I just want you to concentrate your resources on people who are more likely to be Muslim terrorists rather than innocent Muslims, or more likely to be neo-Nazi terrorists rather than innocent neo-Nazis. Right, whatever that category is.
Yeah, like neo-Nazis who just like to go to college campuses and provoke some sort of, reaction.
Yeah. So, and then finally, no, I think this Devon Arthurs is a really interesting symbol of extremism. So what do we tell you all the time? It isn't about it's Christianity or Islam or any race or religion or nationality or ethnicity. It's about fundamentalism. So Arthurs was fundamentalist. It's in his nature. He was a fundamentalist neo-Nazi, and then when he became converted to Islam, he became a fundamentalist Muslim. And he was gonna do some sort of violence either way. And just like all of them, looking for glory. So first he was looking for glory with the neo-Nazis, and then he thought, oh my God, I found people more aggrieved, right? I thought the whites were aggrieved, the Muslims are even more aggrieved. I'm gonna be a hero. I'm gonna be a hero by killing those Nazi kids, and I'm gonna look for glory. So don't give them the glory, and focus on the things that provide us that the real safety risk, which is fundamentalism. Our journalism drive is almost over. It ends in Trump's first 100 days. We need to hire more reporters and more watchdogs. Let's do that right now at tytnetwork.com/go.